Hey friends, welcome back to another video. My name's Lefebvre, and recently one of my patrons brought to my attention a struggle she was having with her pressure stroke, because I talk a lot about light pressure and heavy pressure, but how much heavy pressure should you really be using with your brush, and what can that do to the paint that's on your paper? This is an important one, especially for beginners, so let's jump into it. Hey friends, before we jump into today's video, I want to send out a quick reminder that there are only a few spots left for my watercolor retreat in France. Get ready to be wined and dined by our own private chef in an incredibly beautiful estate where we will be developing our confidence and creativity in our daily watercolor workshops together and creating memories to last a lifetime. Not to mention the amazing day trips into the town of Albi, where we will be learning to sketch and paint on site, and another day trip to a winery, which is going to be incredible. For more detailed information and registration, check out the link in the description below. I hope you guys can join me. All right, let's jump into our video. Okay friends, so today we're going to be doing a quick video, but I wanted to address a very important technique that goes along with watercolor that some of you as beginners may be struggling with. And this was brought up to me by one of my patrons. I love connecting with my friends on Patreon. You get to ask me one-on-one questions, and I really love going into, deep diving into conversations where I can really help you out with whatever you're struggling with. So one of my patrons mentioned today that she had a light bulb moment where she thought that applying more pressure with your brush is going to give you a darker color. And I understand how you would think that. If you are coloring with, a pencil crayon, you press really hard to produce more pigment. Same thing with a marker, right? You press harder to put more pigment down on the paper. Now that is not the trick with watercolor, because what watercolor does, because it's a water-soluble medium, it actually can do the opposite. Instead of applying more color to your paper, it actually lifts more color. So I just want to do a couple demonstrations of pressure strokes, because this is the basics of all painting with watercolor. You need to know the pressure strokes and how to apply paint properly with your brush. So right now I have a size 12 brush. I have my water, I have a sketchbook, and my paints. So usually when we are, creating a background for our painting, we'll use a bigger brush. And say you want to create a dark wash, okay? A dark background, a sky of some sort. Now, what I'm going to ask you to do is you want to cover the most ground with your brush. So usually I say heavy pressure, but really what I mean by heavy pressure is not necessarily pressing down really hard. It's more giving the most space of your brush, applying the most surface area from your brush to your paper. So not necessarily applying the most pressure, but putting the most of your surface area of your brush down on paper. And really you're going to just gently move it back and forth. Now, if I move it too gently like this, I'm not going to cover too much. Or if my brush is more on a right angle, I'll get a thin line. So when I say heavy pressure, I mean press down to the belly of the brush, not so hard, not like this. See how that's lighter in color and you get those streaks? It's because what you're actually doing is you're lifting that color from the paper. What you want to do is press down with enough pressure with your brush to the belly. See how this I know it's a little bit hard to see. I wonder if I can do a side view. Okay. So see how my brush bends to the belly. I'm not actually pressing hard. This is me pressing hard. See how it immediately goes lighter, but a little less pressure, just pressing down to the belly of the brush gives you nice full coverage for thick strokes. Okay, but is not lifting the color. So you actually want to be very gentle with your brush, because the technique of lifting color from your paper is something you do when you want to release that pigment, and that's when you use your heavy pressure. So I can understand how, saying when we're doing our pressure strokes, our light to heavy pressure to light pressure to heavy pressure can kind of get a little bit confusing when you go, well, you said heavy pressure. You meant heavy pressure. Well, not necessarily. You want to just bend those bristles so they meet more of the paper, but not so hard that, look, you lift the color. See how much lighter that gets? You're really lifting and then dragging the color with your brush. Okay, so when you're doing a background wash, I'm actually using light pressure. My hand is very relaxed, it's very loose, and I'm going back and forth gently. I'm just making sure that the belly of my brush is touching the whole page. So if you're getting very streaky washes with your background, release that pressure, just angle your brush so it's a little bit, more contacted with the paper, and you should have a better time with creating washes. Okay, so I wanted to make sure I brought that up with you guys because I get how it can be confusing. Let's do a dual color gradient here just to practice again. So if I say light pressure, I don't necessarily mean thin lines, right? Because that is how you get thin lines. You have the light pressure and you're using just the tip of your brush. Angle your brush so it's a bit flatter, more contact to the page. Gently go back and forth, back and forth. And you shouldn't get that streakiness that comes with heavy pressure. Because if I go like this, do you see those streaks? See the unevenness? That's not what you want. Nice and light. And this goes the same for when you're blending things out. Okay, so I'm going light pressure and I'm just moving it back and forth. Really gentle, because you don't want to lift that color. The minute you put your heavy pressure on there, you lift that color, and that's not what you want. Okay. So someone can give me a better word to use rather than heavy pressure. That might be a bit more clear. Let me know in the comments below. But yeah, light pressure, just full contact with your brush to get less of that streakiness. Now, if you start to get the streakiness and you are doing the light pressure, full contact, it might be because certain parts of your paper are starting to dry, which can cause that separation. So try and do it fairly quickly so it's all the same amount of wetness, but you should be able to do that. So the other thing I was talking about was the blending. So this is where we also kind of come into this issue. So I'm going to grab some green because I like to show you with like a leaf. Okay, so we do our wash here, gentle hand. Okay, and then sometimes I'll ask you to go back in and add a shadow, right? And what happens is we get our darker green and we start putting it here, but then you're applying pressure, thinking that you're putting down more pigment. Really, you're just lifting color. Now, if you were to go back in there gently, look at that color. Okay, now that's a pretty solid line. Even though we're doing wet on wet, it's still pretty definitive of a line. We want to blend it out. First step, wash off your brush completely. Dry it on your paper towel. You don't want to bring any excess water into there because what happens if you have lots of water on your brush, this happens. You get these little blooms, which is the water repelling the color, and you get those hard edges. It's not a bad thing, but if you're trying to have a nice seamless blend, that's not going to help. So dry your brush. That's step one. When you're going back in to blend out an edge from dark to light of a color, again, you do not want to use a lot of pressure because look what's going to happen. I am pushing down, not even that hard, and I'm trying to blend out this edge. See how it's lighter here? It's lifting the color. We don't want that. You don't want to lift the color at all. Okay, so let's go through this again. Apply our light green. Okay, our dark green. We see kind of like our definitive line here of our shadow. We want to blend that out a little bit more. Wash off your brush, dry it. And then with the most gentle touch, you're just going to blend it out. Sometimes, also depending on your paper, Like I'm barely touching it. Okay. Depending on your paper, some papers lift easier. This paper I'm working on right now is a lot smoother, so it actually lifts so easy. So I have to be even more gentle. I might even add a little bit of that light green, and I'm using the least amount of pressure that I can. I don't want to lift any of that color. I just want to blend that line out. A little bit of the darker color. And I'm just trying to blend that line out. So pressure totally matters. Okay, so what I suggest you do, take a page from whatever paper or sketchbook you are working on and really practice your pressure strokes. And I want you to press hard. I want you to press hard to see how your paper lifts. See what it looks like when you do apply that heavy pressure. The only way we can get better at something is practicing also what we shouldn't do, making those mistakes. So press here. Look at this paper. Some papers don't lift that well, okay? But I want you to practice that heavy pressure, and I want you to practice lifting. Test your paper, see what it's capable of. See what it's gonna be like if you do apply that heavy pressure versus the light. Try and blend something out. Try and do a background wash. See what it's like, okay? So get to know your paper. Try different pressure strokes. Make notes, because this is going to help you in the future. So if these are one of the things that you've been struggling with, I highly suggest you take some time out of your day to just practice pressure strokes, working heavy pressure, really pushing down, medium pressure, like that light, but covering a lot of surface area, nice contact with your brush to the paper, and then really, really light pressure to get those thin lines. That is the only way you will master it, and I really hope you enjoyed this. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. If there's any other struggles you are having with your watercolor techniques, and I'd be more than happy to address it. Thank you all so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you learned something. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel and follow me on all my other platforms for tons more content. Have a wonderful day, guys. Bye.